Hello and thank you for coming to check this out. So this is our 15th After Effects reproduction using Apple's Motion 5. The source graphic comes from an After Effects project by Aliyar Mikayilov, and there's a link to check that out in the description. If you follow the link, you'll see the source roll in right at the very beginning. It's going to be a bit of a long guide. You can see in the layers panel we have a lot to do, many steps. So let's get set up first. The project is 1920 by 1080 and it's at 30 frames a second. Project duration 8 seconds is good. If you want to use the same colors as the source graphic, here you go. These are for the blue and the red. And if you want to use the same kind of background as I'm using, it's just a gradient generator with these slightly different shades of blue. Okay, so after colors we need to sort out some guides. If you're not sure about guides, then you get them from your rulers. You just pull them out, pull them back to get rid of them. You turn your rulers on here in the view menu. Make sure guides is selected as well, and once your guides are set up, here's a hotkey to toggle them on and off. Like this, so set your guides up this way. When you move your guide, it will give you a display telling you where you are, so that will help. Guides will help us to keep in line at some key steps through the project. Okay then, as soon as you are all ready, let's continue with the project and see how we put all of this together. Okay, let's get started. We have that gradient sitting in its own group here for the background, and as you see I've added 3 new groups: flourishes, main titles and lower titles. We want to start with the main titles. Grab your line tool and around the middle hold shift and drag from left to right. Give it that blue color. I'm going to rename it lead. And I'll come to the inspector into shape, geometry. We'll give this point -315 and this point 315. Then come into style, set the width to 88, set the start cap and end cap to none. Then come to properties, reset the X and Y position. Okay, now we're going to duplicate this shape. I'm going to call it the sub lead and drag that into the lower titles group and close the lower titles group and turn it off. Then grab that lead shape, change the color to white, and come and grab that out point for your timeline wherever it is and drag it in to sit at around 3 seconds 20 frames. Okay, so now we are ready to animate. Make sure the playhead is at the start. Come and grab the last point offset and set a keyframe. Drag it down to 0. Then bring the playhead forward to 2 seconds and 10 frames. And bring that last point offset back up to 100%. Then drag and select the curve. Right click to choose Bezier. We'll right click on the handles to break the tangents. Then bring the playhead to 27 frames. And we're going to drag the top and bottom handles to place, well, to form a steep segment around where the playhead is. So a steep segment in a curve is when the animation's going to speed up. Right, let's turn the guides on and bring the playhead to 25 frames. Now we're going to adjust this a bit more. Make sure with this bottom handle here, let's adjust it now so that the last point offset is sitting right here against this guide at 25 frames. So just playing that looks pretty good. Okay, then we can turn off the guides for now. Select the curve in the editor, right click on it and choose copy. Then come to the first point offset, actually bring the playhead to 15 frames first, then select the first point offset, right click and choose show in keyframe editor. Select it, set a keyframe and use Command V to paste that curve on. Come to the menu here, bring it back to animated. Okay, bring the playhead to 2 seconds and 15 frames and grab that keyframe point here and pull it back. Okay, so now let's turn our guides back on. Bring the playhead to 1 second and 7 frames. Grab that keyframe point here. We're going to drag this handle to make sure that the first point offset is just slightly on the other side of this guide. Okay, that is looking alright. Let's turn off the guides. Now I'm going to duplicate the lead line and I'll call it Flourish. And I'll drag that up into the Flourishes group and turn off the group and close it for now. Now we can start to add the title, so grab the main titles group, grab the text tool, click in around here, going to go Apple space motion. The font we're using is Unisans semi-bold. There's a link in the description to get that if you don't have it already. The font size 90, center the alignment, and bring the playhead to where the banner will start to cover the title, and come to properties and just by eye let's line it up to the middle. So at about, let's go minus 35 on the Y. Okay, bring the playhead to 3 seconds. Select the title text, come to X position and set that to 0 and set a keyframe. Okay, now bring the playhead to 1 second, 7 frames. So at this point we want the Apple Motion main title to be breaking through this line here. So at 1 second, 7 frames, we want that X position to be behind here somewhere. So let's go for about here, and we'll grab the curve down here, break the tangents on the handles, and let's pull this handle down so it rushes in but not too fast. Okay, let's leave it at that for now. With the text selected, rename it. We'll tag it as follow. Duplicate it. Turn the follow one off. Rename the copy to offset. Bring the playhead in the timeline to where the keyframes start on offset and hit I on your keyboard to trim the duplicate there. And actually we can reset the X position. Then bring the playhead to 25 frames. Use the Shift left bracket hotkeys to bring the in point forward to there. Alright, so at 25 frames, the offset titles are going to break through this point here. They're going to cross here at 25 frames, so we want to make sure that they are on the other side. So we'll pull them back to about here. Set a keyframe on that X position. Your X position and mine might be a little bit different because of the shape of the curves that we got. There's bound to be some differences, but wherever you are, that's why we used the guide at this point. You should be here. So at key steps along the way, our guides will make sure that some things are in the right places, the same places. So with that title on that side, set a keyframe. We can switch the guides off. Bring the playhead forward by 1 second to 1 second 25 frames. And move that title through. Let's come down and grab the curve. Drag to select it. Break the, oops, wrong one. Break the tangents. And pull down to give it a bit of a rush in. Okay, so now we can start with the masking. Grab the lead line, right click, add your image mask, and drag in the offset as the source, and set the blend mode to subtract. Now to try and get things as close as possible to the After Effects source graphic, it's all a matter of timing. So we want the last letter of the offset title to be passing, crossing this first point offset line at about 2 seconds, 10 frames, no, 1 second, 20. Let me just check my notes. Yes, at 1 second 20 frames, we want that N to just be visible here. So first of all, let's see where it is. It's almost there. So if we come and grab this curve here and just decrease the speed that it comes in on, is that going to do much for us? No. So let's come to 1 second 25 frames. Make sure you have the title selected, and let's just move back where it ends up a little bit. Okay, so now we're good to go. So at 1 second 20 frames, that's like the last time we see the last letter, and then it's going to scoot out from there. Alright, let's return to this title here. So select the one we named follow, we can turn it back on, and we're going to give it 3 masks. First of all, grab the lead line in our main titles group, Command D to duplicate it. We're going to name this follow, delete the image mask, select the Apple Motion follow title, right click, add an image mask. We'll name this one follow mask, and let's drag and follow as the source and set the blend mode to subtract. So right on 1 second 7 frames, it's starting to be revealed by the banner as it goes through. We've got 2 more masks to go. Select the follow line in your group, duplicate that, rename it FPO, which means first point offset. Come down to here to the last point offset and reset that. If we turn it on, we'll see what we just did. So now we have a shape with just the first point offset active, and we're going to use that to mask out our follow titles again. So select the Apple Motion follow title, right click, add image mask. We'll call this the FPO mask, and drag in FPO as the source and set the blend mode to subtract. Okay, we are almost done. We just have to take care of this part on the end. I've been looking for a better way to do this, but so far the best way I found is just to add another mask on to trim it out. So select the main titles group, come and grab your rectangle tool, and just drag a rectangle mask around the remnants on that side. Just going to rename this as trim. Select the Apple Motion follow titles, add image mask, we'll call it trim mask, and drag in the trim shape as the source and set that to subtract. I'm going to zoom in a bit, Command and space, and space to drag it around. Select the trim shape, and we want to just pull it back to make sure it's not masking out more than it needs to. Right, so actually if we turn on the guide, you'll see that that's one of the reasons we have the guide, is just to mark out the line there. We could just go into geometry to do it too. Okay, I'm going to Shift Z to bring the canvas back to size, turn off the guide, see how that looks. It's still got a little bit, so you might have fixed yours by now already. How's that? Okay, that's better. So then we have completed the first big step for this graphic. The main titles are done. So now let's just close up the main titles. We're finished with them for the time being. Grab the lower titles group and turn it on. So we'll start with the element we left in there from earlier on. Select that. First we want to come into geometry and change these around, so make this one here 315 and the next one minus 315. Right, so come to properties. We'll set the Y position to -90, and I'll just throw the guide on. To see that's all right, yep. Okay, and come into shape, style, change the width to 48. So it should be running, should be lying across here with the 90 guide running right through the middle. Come into properties, and we want to give it on the x-axis a shear of 8%. Then make sure that it is selected, and we can just drag the handles to sit inside of the guides. Okay, then time to start animating this one. Bring the playhead to 25 frames. Come into shape, style, bring the offset down to 0 and set a keyframe. Then bring the playhead to 2 seconds 25 frames and bring that last point offset all the way back to 100. Okay, so let's grab this curve and right click to set to Bezier. We'll do all the same steps, break the tangents. Bring the playhead to 1 second 20 frames. Right, now we want to check the guide we put here at 86 or 84. At this point we want the last point offset to be touching on this side. So actually, first thing we're going to do is pull the top and bottom handle to start making a steep part around 1 second 20 frames. The bottom banner has a more exaggerated stretch and leap than the top one, so we need to take care of that. So pull this way and this way until we get the steepness around here. That should do for now. Right, and then we want to pull this handle here to make sure that the banner is sitting at 1 second 20 frames on this side of this guide. Right, let's play that. Okay, good. So now we can start animating the first point offset. I'm going to grab the curve, I'll right click, select copy. I'm going to move the playhead to 1 second and 10 frames. Select the first point offset, right click, select show in keyframe editor, select it in the editor, set a keyframe, and Command V to paste that curve on, and then bring the menu back to animated. Okay, bring the playhead to 3 seconds and 5 frames and pull this last keyframe point back to there, and we want to set here in first point offset. This is going to be set at just 85, I think. Let me check my notes. Yep, 85%. Okay, now bring the playhead to 2 seconds and 3 frames Okay, so we want to make sure that at this point, this side of the first point offset is on this side. So grab that curve there and we'll pull it back to sit there. So as I said before, we'll all have slightly different curves, which is what happens when we edit, but by using these guides, if we know exactly where the first and last off point will be at specific points, we should all end up with something that looks similar. Let's just play that through. Okay then, so that banner is completed, and now we can start working on the second titles. Select the lower titles group and grab the text tool, and somewhere around the lowest guide there, click in. Let's add the lower title text. Okay, first of all, change the color to that blue. Come into the inspector, set the font size to 52 and set the tracking to 30. Then center the alignment. Come into properties and give the x-axis a shear of 8 degrees. Bring the playhead to 3 seconds and 15 frames. Move the y-axis so that the lower text lines up with the banner, and then set the x position to 0 and set a keyframe. Then bring the playhead to 2 seconds and 3 frames and move the x position so that the text is on the other side of that first point offset, which is on its way back about now. Right up to the guide is okay. Let's grab the curve, break tangents, and lift this handle up to give it a bit of a rush in. Okay, and then we can rename it as follow, duplicate it, turn it off and select the copy, rename that copy as offset. Bring the playhead to 2 seconds, 3 frames, and trim, use I on your keyboard to trim offset to there. Bring the playhead to 1 second, 20 frames, and use shift left bracket to bring it back. We can reset the X position and just pull it back so that it's sitting right on the incoming last point offset right here. Okay, set a keyframe at that point and bring the playhead forward to 2 seconds, 20 frames, and move it through. Okay, bring the playhead back until the banner covers it a bit, and select the banner. Right click, add image mask, and use offset as the source. Set the blend mode to subtract. And bring the playhead to 2 seconds and 10 frames. And we want to just confirm that at 2 seconds 10 frames, G is the last letter that we see. Just trying to keep things as close as possible to the source graphic. Okay, let's grab that curve, make the tangents, increase the speed on that. Okay, let's make sure the play is at 2 seconds 20 frames, and I'm just going to bring the X position forward a little bit more so that it seems to travel through. Okay then. Right then, turn the follow graphic back on. Select sublead, duplicate it, delete the image mask, rename this as follow, and select our graphics follow, right click, add image mask, drop in follow as the source, set the blend mode to subtract, duplicate the follow line there and rename it FPO, reset the last point offset, we can turn it on and select graphics follow, add image mask, drop in FPO as the source and set that to subtract. Alright, I'll just turn off the guides, let's see how this plays. Okay, so I'd say we are ready to move on and do the flourishes. Close up the titles group, select the flourishes group from earlier on, turn it on, open it up, select the flourish line we put in there earlier. Let's move the banner until we see it. Okay, first of all I'm going to duplicate this and call the duplicate lower red, and I'm going to change the color to the red and I'll turn it off for now. I'll select the flourish one here and I'm going to call this top white. I'll move the playhead to 1 second and use shift left bracket to move the in point forward and then reset the first point offset. I'm going to come into properties here and set the Y position to 78, then move the playhead forward till we can see it, then come into shape and drop the width to 12. Okay, bring the playhead to 3 seconds 5 frames and just pull back that keyframe node here, and this item has a, earlier on we duplicated this banner to make this flourish item, but we want to give it a slightly stronger ease in the beginning, so a little bit more this way and a little bit more this way. It's kind of synchronized a bit more with the bottom banner. They both come to their final place at the same time. Okay, that's looking alright. Right, I'm going to duplicate top white. I'm going to call it top red. Make sure the playhead's at 3 second 5 frames. Come and change the last point offset value to 90, and then come and change the color to the red. Then let's duplicate that, rename it as top blue. Let's give it the blue color and set the last point offset to 70. Let's see how that plays. Quite good. Right, let's turn on that one we named lower red and come to the inspector and drop the width to 8, and then come to properties and drop the Y position to -60. It should sit right on our guide now. Actually, let's just run the banner forward. Right, let's drop, I'll just turn the guides off again. Drop the Y position a little bit more so it kind of runs across the top edge of the blue banner. Actually, we'll drop it into the lower titles group, and I'm going to command left bracket to move it under the banner. Okay, so it's running just under the banner as they cross paths. I might adjust it up a little bit more. Alright, like that. Yep. Right then, last steps. Move the playhead to 5 frames. Select that lower red and just use the shift left bracket hotkey to move the endpoint forward. Okay then, let's close up all the groups and we can animate out now. Reset your out point to the end of the project. Add a new group. I'm going to call this animate out, and select all our groups and move them in. Bring the playhead to 3 seconds 20 frames. Select the animate out group and use the O key on your keyboard until you see every item is trimmed to that point. Going to right click and select make clone layer. Then I'll use shift left bracket to move the clone layer to begin where our animate in group ends. In timing, I'm going to choose reverse. If you can't see the timing options, then just around here where it says show or hide, make sure they're revealed. I'll have that set to reverse. Let's see what we have. Okay, not a bad effort. I think if you can get over and check out the source graphic, then you will be able to tweak things and adjust things to make them look even better. And that wraps up the 15th After Effects reproduction. I hope that was useful for you, and thanks for watching.